Hello and welcome. This is Vasyl Babych with UATV broadcasting from Toronto, Canada. The Ukraine Reform Conference is taking place here, so our team, in cooperation with Agri-Team Canada, is launching a special series of interviews about the effectiveness of current reforms in Ukraine. And today we're discussing civil society and with my guest, Vasyl Babych, Head of International Relations at the Reanimation Package of Reforms Coalition. Hello and thank you for joining us, Vasyl.
Thank you.
So could you please tell us how fruitful is this conference for civil society, for the Ukrainian civil society, and maybe in comparison with the previous one that was taking place in Copenhagen last year?
I think this time, if we compare two conferences, so in Copenhagen in 2018, we were a civil society driving by car, and this time in Toronto, in Canada, we are using the plane, right? So we are flying by plane. What does it mean?
What does it mean, right?
Actually, the role of civil society at this conference is tremendous. So we, with coordination of the Reanimation Package of Reforms, and together with more than 90 civil society organizations, we drafted the main content of the conference, the visionary document, Toronto Principles.
This is the document that has been presented here at the conference, right? That have
Absolutely,
been prepared by the civil society. What does this document envisage, and how important is it?
So basically, it's a vision, or consolidated vision of Ukrainian civil society, first, and also the public sector, business associations, of how Ukraine should develop in the next 5 years. And we, basically, when we started drafting this document, it consisted of 12 points, but after the regional consultations in macro regions, we have gone to Kharkiv to the east, to Odessa to the south, and Lviv to the west, to hear the opinion to the draft of experts, of civil society, of local deputies and local businesses, of are we moving in the right direction or wrong, right?
Wow.
Also, we settled down online consultations, and we presented the final draft on the 22nd of May in Kyiv at RPR Forum, together with MPs, civil society leaders, ministers, and also public sector leaders.
So you had the discussions, and also it sounds like this document, to prepare this document, it took quite a long time because all of the processes, and you say that you traveled around Ukraine collecting all of the opinions from other civil society activists. So basically, how long did it take to prepare these principles?
So altogether, we count the time from December 2018, right? So it's more than 7 months of work.
7 months.
Right. And, you know, if we compared how Ukrainian constitution was adopted and this document is, it was not so complex, but already complex and hard, because there are so variety of opinions, but finally we get to the 4-page document of 17 principles which will drive Ukrainian moving forward to European Union and NATO and internal reforms for the next 5 years.
This is great, but tell us about these principles.
So basically we could, to make it short, we could divide the whole document into 3 main blocks. The first one is national security and rule of law, which includes security, anti-corruption, law enforcement agencies, rule of law institutions, judicial reform. Second block is very important. It's democracy and good governance, and how we see the country should be governed. It's election reform, parliamentary reform, e-democracy, and others. And thirdly, also very important point is prosperity and human capital development. It means microfinancial stability and economical reforms, social reforms. It means social security, healthcare reform, and very important, education and development of education and science.
So this is more like a declaration of the agenda of the civil society, right? Of the opinion of the civil society. What impact can it have on Ukrainian government? Can it have any decisive role or any to serve as some kind of a push for Ukrainian government to accelerate the reforms? And especially if we keep in mind that this document has been presented here at this conference in Toronto.
very important point, firstly, that it's already a consolidated vision of more than 100 organizations, civil society organizations, and some private sector business associations, right? Secondly, it's after the conference, it's no more the document of civil society. It was actually endorsed in the co-chair statement of Ukrainian and Canadian government after the conference. So it's already a political document which Ukrainian and Canadian government supports. And we very much hope that this document, and we are ready for that, and we're already starting doing that, communicating and advocating it for the broader society, for political parties to, for example, to make sure that at least some of the points from this vision will be, for example, in the coalition agreement of the next government.
This is very important, and I think that, well, you mentioned that the principles are divided into these three themes. You explained the themes, but maybe it would worth explaining the audience, or maybe letting it having some glimpse onto these priorities for the next 5 years. So maybe they can understand what reforms do you think should be accelerated. So maybe what reforms are kind of lagging behind right now with the pace. What reforms are very successful in your opinion also, because we cannot focus on everything. We don't have much time. Maybe a few minutes until
it's very important to mention that Ukraine has already made a tremendous progress, for example, in decentralization reform. There was some programs on healthcare reform and educational reform, which both are going on. The anti-corruption infrastructure is already in place with so many important institutions, and very important. And lastly, a few months ago, anti-corruption court started to work, right? But there are already a lot of setbacks and low level of trust of Ukrainian population, for example, to courts and judges, and it should be fixed, right?
Of course, judiciary reform.
Judicial reform is on top of that.
Should continue.
And another point is, for example, who will do this job of implementing the reforms? It's the government. The government produces and creates policies, yeah, and we stress also very big importance of public administration reform. It's already ongoing. More than 600 new civil servants are appointment with a new philosophy of strategic planning and European integration, right, and Western style of making things in civil service. But we are already not there, not yet there.
Apart from the judiciary reform, what else?
What else?
What else to accelerate? Okay, judiciary reform, and what else? Just give us a list, please, and we are going to finish on that.
When we are getting to the second sector, to the block of democracy and good governance, counting public administration reform first, it's parliamentary reform, right? To make the process of making good laws, not a lot of laws, not the spam as we have hundreds or thousands of laws with, with changing just two words or, numbers in laws, but making this process really solid and Western style. Very important election reform. What we propose as civil society is open party lists, right, where each citizen could choose not only the name of the party, but the name of the representative
of the person, right?
And also
to form the list, basically.
Absolutely. And what we have the same voice, the civil society, and what President Zelensky is already mentioning for several months is the country in smartphone, the state in smartphone,
yes.
right?
He wants to make the country of mobile apps.
E-services.
So just the very last question, yes or no, does this document, this Toronto Principles, do they mean that the dialogue between the government and the Ukrainian civil society can now somehow be softened and not that sharp?
Yeah, we very much hope that this will be a roadmap for strengthening the dialogue with the new administration, probably new government and new MPs, and we have very good start for this.
Thank you so much, Vasyl. Thank you. So I would remind you that that was Vasyl Babych, Head of International Relations at the Reanimation Package of Reforms Coalition. Thank you so much for watching Head to Head. I'm Oles Gerjuk. Goodbye.